Hello, everyone. Today we are going to continue on with 7.6. We're going to do the 7.6 day 2 stuff today. This video should be way shorter than yesterday's. Nice thing about day 2 of this lesson is it's really not a lot of new stuff. If you felt good about the stuff from yesterday, it's really the same skill. If you felt a little shaky on the stuff yesterday, it's a chance for you to kind of practice a little bit more. Right? And I'm gonna turn my phone on silent. The thing that I want to really do today is I want to make sure we can get through these negative problems, and also what we're doing is solving. So I'm actually going to add on, I'm on 233 here in my student journal, and I'm actually going to add on equals 0 to this problem, because this way I can kind of show you, 1, what to do when you have a negative a value, and 2, how you actually go through and solve these. And spoiler alert, it's the exact same way you've been solving every other factoring problem we've been doing. Okay, you set your factors equal to 0 at the end, right? So the thing to watch out for, and we have a whole section of problems like this in your homework, if you have a negative a value, that should be kind of an alarm bell, because the factoring that we do, the way we set it up, it really doesn't work if you have a negative a value. So what you're going to want to do is basically just factor out that negative number. Okay, you're going to say, okay, I don't want that a value to be negative, so I'm just going to go ahead and factor out a negative 1. Everything else is going to be the same, so I'm going to say, okay, I'm dividing out a negative 1 from each of these terms. So essentially all I'm doing is I'm just swapping all these signs. Now I have 12b squared minus 5b minus 2. Okay, so just have to keep that negative 1 there. It's just going to hang out on the outside of my trinomial or my binomials, whatever I have. And I'm going to factor this just like normal. I think most of us really prefer this slide and divide method. So for this example, I'm going to do that. And at the very end, I'll do a grouping example. Just for those of you who might prefer that method, we can see just one more example. But I'm going to do slide and divide for this. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to slide that 12 over and multiply it with my negative 2. Okay, so I get negative 1. So now I just have b squared minus 5b minus 24. Okay, so I got to think for a second. Okay, what are my factors of negative 24 that add up to negative 5? So first off, I do know if I multiply something and I end up with a negative number, I know I multiplied a positive and a negative number together. Okay, so I have to think, okay, what are my factors of 24 that have a difference of negative 5? So I look over here at my little handy dandy factor sheet, and I see I have 3 and 8 here for 24. So I know, okay, I want this to end up being negative 5, so I know my higher number needs to be negative. So it's going to be a negative 8, positive 3 here. Okay, so when I slide and divide, you start off by just factoring like normal, b plus 3 and b minus 8, but you have to remember you're not done yet. Okay, it's so easy to go, okay, cool, that looks done, and say, all right, that's it, but you have to remember you started off this process with the slide, you multiplied, now you have to divide. You have to take that same number, it's this a value, okay, this 12, and you've got to divide both of those numbers by 12. Okay, so let's do that here. Got 3 divided by 12 and 8 divided by 12. I've got 2 little fractions now that I'm going to go ahead and simplify. Okay, negative 1 on the outside still. And okay, I have b plus, divide each of these by 3. I'm going to get 1/4. And then b minus, my signs are going to stay the same. So divide each of those by 4, and I get 2/3. Right? And again, you don't want to leave this in fraction form. You want to take those denominators and just put them right there in front of b. Okay, so -1 still on the outside. I forgot to move the 4. Okay, it should be 4b now, plus 1. You leave that numerator there just as your whole number. And then 3b minus 2, all equal to 0. Okay, now what you want to do is set each factor equal to 0, just like we've been doing. Okay, I'm going to continue this over here. I'm going to say each one of these little factors, these pieces, need to equal 0. So first off, it's kind of strange when you just have a number here. Okay, we just have that -1. So technically I could say, okay, -1 equals 0, but there's really nothing I can do to make that statement true. So if you want, you can write it out just to remind yourself that that is a factor, but when you just have a number and no variable, that factor is not going to equal 0. So we can kind of forget about it if we want. But this 4b plus 1 equal to 0, and our 3b minus 2 equal to 0, those both we're going to need to solve to find our final answers for this one. Right? So I'm going to subtract my 1. I noticed a lot of us, when we were solving out some of our other factoring problems, we wanted to divide first. Same steps as way back in the beginning of the year. You want to add, subtract first, and then divide. So I've got 4b equal to -1. Divide by 4, divide by 4. And I get b is equal to -1/4. Okay? The cheat code here is it's the same as if you had plugged that into equal to 0. Okay, for final factored form, I do want to see it like this, but you end up with the same answer as if you had plugged your original binomial equal to 0. If that helps, great. If not, just solve it out. Then we have this 3b minus 2. Again, you want to add or subtract first. So we're going to add 2 here to both sides. I get 3b is equal to 2. And divide out your 3 to get b is equal to 2/3. Okay, again, same as if you just plug this b minus 2/3 equal to 0, but for your final factored form, you do want to change it so you have the whole numbers. Okay. Now I want to go into a grouping problem. If the grouping thing doesn't make sense to you, I know a lot of us prefer the slide divide that I just showed you. I do want to just do one more grouping problem just so that we can see it, those of us that prefer it. I'm going to go over here to number 17 and do that real quick. Okay, I'm going to also make this one equal to 0 just so you can see me solving one out. Okay, if I have a negative here for a, my very first step needs to be factoring that -1 out. I don't want that there anymore. Okay, I need to divide each of these by -1. I'm going to change all of these signs. Okay, so I have 3r squared plus 4r plus 1 equal to 0. Okay, for grouping, again, I always still use this little x, but what goes in the bottom, that's the same, it's just b. But what goes in the top is not just c, it's a times c. So not 1, I get 3 times 1, so 3. Okay, so I'm thinking of my factors of 3 that add up to 4. That's simple enough. 3 is prime, so all I have are just 3 and 1. And now that I've factored out my positive 1, everything is just positive. So remember, for grouping, I'm not saying r plus 3, r plus 1. For grouping, I'm saying, okay, I'm splitting up my 3r. Okay, I'm keeping that -1 on the outside. I'm saying, now this is 3r squared plus 3r plus just 1r, or r plus 1. You're breaking that 4r into 2 separate parts. Okay, because now we want to group. And again, I'm just going to leave this -1 over here to the side. I'm kind of ignoring it for now. Okay. So I get 3r squared plus 3r, and then a group of r plus 1, all equal to 0. And I want to think now I can factor whatever I want out of these groups. Whatever I can factor out, that's what I want to do. Okay, so again, -1, I don't want to forget it, but I'm kind of ignoring it for now. I am going to factor out a 3r, okay, because I've got a 3r in each of these. And I'm going to be left with r plus 1. Okay, I know I want 2 copies of the same binomial, so, okay, this r plus 1 right here, really, there's nothing I want to change, so I'm going to factor out technically a 1, okay, because I don't want that r plus 1 to change. Right, then my final step, I want to kind of rearrange here, so I'm going to factor out technically that r plus 1, and I'm left with 3r plus 1. Still that -1 on the outside. And again, same as before, I'm going to set each one of those equal to 0. You don't really have to bother with the -1. It's really just going to stay, -1 equal to 0. There's nothing you can do to make that true. So we can just go over here and say, okay, r plus 1 equal to 0, and 3r plus 1 equal to 0. Okay, just a 1 or 2 step equation. I'm going to subtract 1 from each side, so I get r is equal to -1. Over here, I'm going to add or subtract first. I'm going to subtract 1. 3r is equal to -1. I want to divide by 3, so I get r is equal to -1/3. Okay, a lot of your answers when we are dealing with this a is greater than 1, a lot of your answers are going to be fractions, okay? So don't get scared off by that. You can just leave them in fraction form, don't change them to decimals, right? I know that this is a lot of information. I know that this isn't the easiest stuff. Please just send me an email if you get stuck. I can help you out, and just make sure you're going over this material. We have our test coming up soon, so just let me know if you run into problems, and I'll see you later this week.